Hello guys, good evening everyone. My name is Loisa Medi Binato and my report of regarding of language learning materials. Composing simple narrative text. Narrative text includes any types of writing that relates a series of events and including both fiction, novels, short stories and poems, and non-fiction, memoirs, biographies, news stories. Both forms tell stories that use imaginative language and express emotion, often through the use of imaginary metaphors and symbols. What is the composition of narrative text? Narrative essays are usually told in the chronological order, which is from beginning to the end. It is important, however, to include more than just the beginning, middle, and end of the story. The story needs to follow a plot, which is the sequence of events in a story. The climax is the important in a narrative essay. So climax means when he doesn't really finally makes his way to part of the story where he makes the big catch. They have types of narrative writing. There are many narrative writing genres and subgenres such as the adventure, fairy tale, myth, love story, drama, fable, legend, science fiction, fantasy, mystery or whodunit, comedy, and tragedy. As we can see, narratives are in the open-ended form of the writing that allows you to showcase creativity in many directions. However, all narratives shares a common set of the feature and structures known as the story elements. Characteristic of narrative writing. So first is the narrative structure. Orientation or beginning. The set of the scene by introducing your character settings and time of the story. Establish who you when you are part of the narrative. The second one is the complication and event or the middle. In this section, activities and events involving your main character are expanded upon these events are written by the cohesive and fluent sequence. The third one of the narrative structure is resolution, so the ending. Your complication is resolved in his section. It does not have to be happy or outcomes, however. And extras of this is wishlist orientation, complication, and resolution are the agreed norms of the narrative. Therefore, are the numerous examples of popular texts that did not explicitly follow the path exactly. The third one is the narrative features. So in language, use descriptive of the figurative language to paint image inside your audience mind as they read. So ang perspective ito is narrative can be written by any perspective but are most commonly written in the first or third person. So the dialogue is narrative frequently, which of the narrator to the first dialogue always uses speech marks when writing a dialogue. So on tense dito is if you can change tense, make it perfectly clear to your audience what is happening. Flashback might walk well in your mind, but make sure that the translate of your audience. So that are the narrative structure and narrative features. So as you can see, this graphic is known as a plot map. And nearly all the narrative fits, this structure is one way of to another, whether romance novels, science fiction, or otherwise. It is a simple tool that helps you understand and organize a story events. Think of it as a roadmap that outlines the journey of your characters and the event that unfold. It outlines the different steps along the way, such as the introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution that help you to see how the story builds and develops. Using a plot map, you can see how each event fits into the large picture and how the different parts of the story work together to create meaning. It is a great way to visualize and analyze a story. Be sure to refer a plot map when planning a story as it has all the essential elements of the great story. So how to write a narrative? Now that we understand the story elements and how they come together to form a stories, it's time to start planning and writing your narrative. In many cases, the template and guide below will provide enough details on how to craft a great story. So as you can see, at the side of this picture, you can see the narrative, writing organizer narrative. So usually includes when, where, or what. So complication is dilemma or problem that sets us all event. A dilemma or problem which describes of the normal life of the comfort of the character and sets off all the sequence and interesting events. So yeah, you can see the pattern of the narrative. So let's proceed the setting of the scene. The where and the when. The story setting often answers two of the central questions in the story, namely, the where and the when. The answer to these two crucial questions will often be informed by the type of the story of the student writing. So the story setting can be chosen to quickly orient the reader of the type of the story they are reading. For example, a fictional narrative writing piece such as a horror story will often begin with a description of a haunted house on the hill or abandoned asylum in the middle of the woods. If we start our story of the rocket ship hunting through the cosmos of the space voyage to the Alpha Centauri star system, we can be responsible sure that the story we are enmarking of the work of the science fiction. The second one is casting of the characters or the who. Now that their student has created a believable world, it is the time to populate it with the believable characters. In short stories, this world must be overpopulated beyond that we students' skill level can manage. Short story usually only require the main character and a few secondary ones. Think of the short story more as a small-scale dramatic production in the intimate local theater than a Hollywood blockbuster on a grand scale. Too many characters will only confuse and become unwieldy with a canvas this size. Keep it simple. The third one is no problem, no story, how conflict drives a narrative. There is often the area apprentices written have the most difficulty with. Student must understand that without a problem or conflict, there is no story. The problem is a driving force of the action. Usually, in a short story, the problem will center around that the primary character wants to happen or indeed wants to happen. It was the hurdle that must be overcome. It is the struggle to overcome this hurdle that events happen. Often, when the student understands the needs for a problem in a story, their completed work will still not be successful. This is because often of the life problems remain unsolved. Hurdles are not always successfully overcome. Students pick up on this. The fourth one is the narrative climax. How things come to be ahead. The climax of the story is the dramatic high points of the actions. It is also when the struggles kick off by the problems come to the head. The climax will ultimately decide whether the story will have a happy or tragic ending. In the climax, two opposing forces duke things out until a bitter or sweet end. One force ultimately emerges triumphant as the action builds throughout the story. Suspense increases as the reader wonders which of the forces will win out. The climax is the release of this suspense. Much as the success of the climax depends on the other elements of the story have been achieved. In the student has created a well-drawn and believable character that the reader can identify with the feel or for the climax will be more powerful. The last one is resolution, tying up loose ends. After the climatic action, a few questions will often remain unresolved for the reader. Even if all the conflict has been resolved, the resolution is where those linger questions will be answered. The resolution in short story may only be a brief paragraph or two, but in the most cases, it will still be necessary to include an ending immediately after the climax. Can feel too abrupt and leave the reader feeling unfulfilled. An easy way to explain resolution to students struggling to the grasp of the concept is point to the traditional resolution of fairy tales. And they all live happily ever after. Ending, this weather forecast for the future allows the reader to take their leave. Have the student consider the emotions they want to leave the reader with the new crafting their resolution. So, thank you for listening. Pasensya na po sa boses ko. May sakit po kasi ako. May isasend pa po akong isang video for additional information. Thank you po. God bless.